All right, everybody, there has been a lot of name calling against our office today. Corporate maligning, slurring, much of it coming from one of you. I'm Prison Mike! Biatch!
So The Office wasn't exactly known for its villains. When your show's most recognizable villain is this guy,
Yeah.
I feel there might be a problem. Don't get me wrong, he's fantastic to hate. Absolutely bloody fantastic. But as far as threatening goes, I mean, he did kind of threaten Jim one time.
Don't get all defensive, alright? It's just a warning.
Anyway, Jan always skated between victim and villain. And if you can tell me this guy's last name,
This is Search.
comment it down below. But for a show that didn't have any fantastic villains, man did it nearly hit that mark in its final one. Just a disclosure here, when I say final season, I don't mean the final season. My personal headcanon is that season 8 is the final season of The Office. You, sir, do not exist! But anyway, the final season of The Office. But in case you forgot, which, let's be honest, you probably did, the villain of season 8 was this guy.
There is only sex.
The sexually psychopathic Robert California. Now, I know some people like this character. I don't. And you shouldn't. But you have to admit, he was pretty close to being the perfect end villain for The Office. Now, before I get into exactly why he's the ultimate villain, let's quickly establish a very important baseline here. Robert California is a villain.
I guess I think they're losers.
I knew it.
I know some people think this is arguable because of the way he's portrayed in certain scenes. So for the sake of accuracy, let's just go through and point out why these scenes don't matter. Robert California, if anything, is a character of convenience. He doesn't want to directly deal with anybody or anything. He will go so far to avoid any real confrontation of any kind. The most obvious example of this is the wife episode. He doesn't want to hire his wife, so instead of talking to her, he just gets Andy to not hire her. Then when that inevitably blows up, he gets the entire office to be extremely rude to her before forcing another interaction on Andy. Let's be clear here. That's messed up! And honestly, it's quite unhealthy, but it sort of demonstrates my point. This could have been over at any time if he just had a conversation with his wife. But instead, he chooses to inconvenience everybody else. He didn't want to deal with it, so everybody else had to. This sets the precedent for all the good guy acts he does later. The only reason he offers to buy Andy and Erin at dinner is to avoid dealing with Andy. He avoids organizing his client assignments so he doesn't have to deal with the sales. He creates an entire store and new section of the company just so he doesn't have to talk to Joe. Not only is that an incredibly poor business move, but that's insanely selfish. I know this moment gets lost because it's Packer getting his comeuppance, but this is actually wrong. Todd's right. He was only VP for convenience's sake. He worked for Dunder Mifflin for 20 years. And now he's getting fired because Robert simply doesn't want to talk to Joe. He doesn't care about his workers. He doesn't seem to care about people in general. Which gets me to his treatment of the Scranton branch.
3, 2, 1, 0.
He's not their friend. He doesn't treat them like friends, but rather just objects to help him entertain himself. You find out exactly what he thinks of them in the second episode he's in.
There's something about an underdog that really inspires the unexceptional.
After that, he divides the office into winners and losers. Then he takes them out to lunch and tells them this. This is probably the biggest warning for his behaviors because it's remarkably unprofessional. Let's talk about how he fired Andy. Andy took a sick day to go to California and get Erin. At which point Nellie just sits in the branch manager's seat and decides,
I am manager.
yeah, that's exactly how that happens. Then Robert just doesn't do anything about it. He just decides that it's too much of a hassle for him to deal with. Andy was a fantastic branch manager who succeeded all the goals Robert had set for him, only to be fired because Robert didn't want to talk to Nellie. Robert California is a culmination of all the previous villains. He's as egotistical and weirdly sexual as Jen, as big of a douche as Ryan, and somehow an even bigger dick than this guy, whose name still escapes me even though I looked it up earlier in the script. Robert's basically a villainous sexual Voltron.
There's a party.
But it's fitting that he appeared when he did. This was the first season after Michael left. Robert is the first major challenge that the office is going to have to overcome since losing their leader. And by having them overcome a culmination of all their previous villains, you can leave knowing that everything is going to be okay. They're going to be alright because they've proven that they can take care of themselves. And it honestly would have been a lovely note to end the series on. The issue I find with Robert and Season 8 in general is that the show doesn't seem to want to commit. Minus one phone call, Robert's never on the forefront of villainy. It's like the show is constantly forgetting that he's the villain. It's pretty hard to take him as a serious threat when there's literally an episode where the cast throws a party at his house. It's something I've always found incredibly disappointing about this season. The fact that it could have been a near perfect goodbye for the show. They just lacked the commitment to follow through. I understand that a show doesn't owe the audience anything, but for a show that was actively a staple in a lot of people's lives, it's just kind of disappointing to know it ended the way it did. Before the show, the only time I created a headcanon for a fictional group was Artemis Fowl. With that book series, I knew there was never going to be an ending that I felt satisfied with. So I read the final book with the exception of the final chapter. The reason I did that was so I could create my own ending, and I would never know anything else to disagree with it. Not only is The Office the first show I've done that with, but it's also the first time I've seen The Countering Evidence, Season 9, and decided to create my own headcanon anyway. I know it's not the best season, but I enjoyed Season 8, and I think it would have been a fitting ending for the show. I hope you enjoyed it too. Hey, if you like this video, if you have your own headcanon, or you agree with mine, or even if you just know this guy's name, you should comment that down below. Otherwise, if you have the time for watching and getting this far, I thank you greatly, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you could comment, share, like, or subscribe.